Hi, BC family. Welcome to your midweek devotion. So, this week I want to talk to you about just one thing. And it's something that I'm pretty sure I've talked about before in the past, but over this last weekend, I just got so stirred up about it again. So, Luke 10:38. As Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Martha loved Jesus, okay? And she was a godly woman. She was the one who actually came out of her house to meet Jesus and invited him into her home. That was Martha. Martha did that, right? She went out and said, Jesus, I want you to come into my home. I want you to be with me. But what I want you to see today is the difference between Mary and Martha is that inviting him into her home gave her that proximity to Jesus, but not the intimate fellowship with Jesus. And that's what we're going to look at today. So Luke 10:39 through 40. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he taught. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me. So Martha, she wanted Jesus in her life, right? She went out to meet him and invited her in. She wanted him to be in her home. She wanted proximity to him. But then she got busy, right? I mean, you invite him into your home, and now think about it. If you invited Jesus into your home, you'd want to make sure it was clean. Let's go prepare some snacks. So that's what she's doing, right? She had a servant's heart. Everything, her motives and everything were in the right place, but it made her busy. And I want to point out she's not busy with trivial, ridiculous things. She's a good busy. She's hosting and she's welcoming into her home and she wants to make sure he's comfortable. It was with important things, but the pressure of the moment and the urgency of what is going on has caused her to become busy, right? The pressure of the moment and the urgency of what's going on. She can still hear Jesus's words. I mean, he's in the house talking. She can hear him. He's speaking, right? So she's hearing him, but the words are not penetrating her heart. So I want you to see how closely this relates to our life. We wake up, we invite Jesus into our life. We say, Jesus, I want you to come be with me today, be in proximity today. But the pressure of the moments and the urgency of what is going on around us cause us to become so busy. And sometimes that means we're like putting on a sermon, we're listening, but we're doing, or we're reading our Bible on our phone, but things pop up and then we scroll over to a different page and you start to get consumed with other things, right? And the words that you're reading or listening to aren't really penetrating your heart. The King James says it this way, but Martha was cumbered about much serving and came to him and said, Lord, dost thou not care that my sister hath left me to serve alone? Bid her therefore that she come help me. Cumbered said that, but Martha was cumbered about much serving. Cumbered in the Greek means pulled in many directions, right? I can fully relate to this. How about you? Right? She was pulled in many directions. If you're married, you have kids, you work, you have a job, you have friends, you have a ministry, then you understand that word cumbered. You understand being pulled in many directions with things that require our need and our attention, right? So you can see Martha here in a bit of a different light. It wasn't that she was just going to only worry about the stuff and fully ignore Jesus. No, she went and she invited him in and she was in proximity, but she started getting pulled in every direction and she forgot about intimacy, right? So she did the right thing. She invited him to her home. She's hearing his word. She has proximity to him. But Jesus still says this to her in Luke 10:41 and 42. But the Lord said to her, my dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it and will not be taken away from her. So Jesus said, you are missing the one thing. What was that? Intimacy with him. This happens a lot in our lives. You can see this parallel with our kids, our husbands. We have proximity to them, but not intimacy with them. That is a big killer of marriages. You have this proximity to your spouse, but you don't have that intimacy with your spouse, that one-on-one quality time where you're truly listening and hearing each other and being there for each other. She was close to Jesus, she was, but she was not spending that quality, intimate fellowship with Jesus. Mary, however, was getting as close to Jesus as possible. I mean, she sat at his feet. That's like no more personal space, right? She was as close as she could get. And she had decided to put away all the distractions and focus completely and solely on him. She had the one thing. Not only was it proximity, but she was having intimacy with him. I was reading my devotion the other day, and this is what the author said. She said, it's essential that I view my time with God each morning as a preparation and an invitation. So she used the scripture 2 Timothy 3:16-17. All scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work. So she said, every verse I read is part of God's preparation for me that day, right? Isn't that what it said? That all scripture is God breathed and it's there to teach us and rebuke us and correct us and train us. That's what it's there for. So she said, every verse I read is part of God's preparation for me that day. So instead of just rushing to check it off my to-do list, I invited God into my home. I spent my time with him. I must allow his teachings to seep into my heart and mind. Then I can prayerfully ask God to interrupt my natural flesh response and remind me throughout the day of the truths he taught me from that morning. That takes it from proximity, where I sat and I did my Bible, check it off my list, to intimacy. See that little bit of a difference? She also mentioned it being an invitation. When we sit at his feet, no distractions, we are inviting him to do life with us today. God, not my will, but yours be done, right? So we focused ourselves to notice and see Jesus in everything we do throughout the day. When we have that intimacy with him, then we see him all day long in all things, right? So again, but the Lord said to her, my dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it and it will not be taken away from her. Just one thing. Jesus is inviting us every morning to be intimate with him, to press into him. He knows exactly what your day is going to hold, or your week will hold, or the year. And he's saying, come sit with me. Let me prepare you, equip you, and strengthen you for your day, right? I think of coal sometimes, and when it's going through the transformation into a diamond, there's a lot of pressure, right, and pressing. But I see it more in the light of when we press into God, when we are getting as close to him as we can possibly get in his presence, then the dust of the coal, the dark and the blackness of the coal begins to fall off and the diamond begins to shine. We become more and more of who God says we are when we press into him and have those intimacy times with him. So this week, don't be like Martha. Don't just invite him into your home and have proximity to him. Do what Mary did and have intimacy with him. Step into that secret place where it's just you and him, and allow him to pour into you everything you need for your day and your week ahead. It's that every morning sitting at the feet of Jesus, it is the one thing that is needed. Have a great week. Bye.